Clare Gallagher. Hello. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hey, Debo. Thanks so much for having me.
What's up, dude? Are you back in Boulder, Colorado? It looks like you're broadcasting from your apartment there or something.
Yep, I am. I don't know if you can see my cat Mermaid.
Hey, mermaid.
Sleep on the bed. She's happy mommy's home. Yeah, I'm in Boulder.
Yeah, we're in California, and I've got both my two exhausted dogs here too. Hopefully, they don't interrupt our conversation. But, dude, you're back in Boulder after another incredible, victorious run at the Black Canyon 100K over the weekend. How's it feel to be home? Are you still on cloud nine?
It was a fantastic 9 hours in the desert. I love hot weather, and I mean, it's sunny here. I love where I live, so I'm happy here too. Life's good.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. And, we'll go into the whole race experience. I want to get the full blow by blow, but I want to start on sort of the personal and professional front. Last time you and I talked, you were sort of like doing some work for Patagonia. You were thinking about going to law school. What's happening in the life of Clare Gallagher before we get into the running stuff?
Yeah, I remember it was about a year ago. I was studying for the LSAT. I have managed to attempt to go into every type of graduate school, and I finally have landed, I think, fingers crossed. I'll know in a couple of weeks, but not to law school, but to grad school. So like specifically for marine biology. But why I was interested in law school was marine policy, like what we do as Homo sapiens to our oceans, which is like 70% of this planet. But not a lot of law schools like focus on that because most of it's international law. And I happen to find this one professor at Boulder, CU Boulder, who is this badass mover and shaker in the fields of marine protection policy. And so hopefully I'll start grad school. You start with a master's, maybe go the PhD route in the fall.
Awesome. And marine conservation has always been somewhat of a passion of yours. Is that how Mermaid got her name also?
You betcha. My other cat's name is Manta Ray.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So what about the marine stuff inspires you rather than other types of conservation work?
Yeah, it's not the first thing that comes to mind when, most people talk to me, because it's like, yeah, I'm a professional runner. I run long races in the mountains. But for 4 years, when I was in undergrad out of New Jersey, I was studying coral. Not in New Jersey, not to get confusing.
The beautiful coral reefs of Newark, New Jersey.
Yeah, there's diving out there, but I was studying in the tropics. So I spent a whole summer in Bermuda, a summer in Palau, and I mean, Dylan, have you been snorkeling? Tell me your experience.
I'm an amateur snorkeler. I've done it. It's actually probably been about 5 years since the last time I snorkeled in Mexico, actually. And it was a fantastic experience. We saw whales. We saw all sorts of awesome marine life. I've never done scuba. But I know, you've been sort of active in the diving world yourself. So I don't know, give me the sales pitch about why I need to take my marine recreation more seriously.
Well, that's sweet. You saw whales, talk about.
I lost it too.
Yeah.
Spiritual experience.
Oh man, I'm totally stoked. I've never seen whales in the water. I'm living through this right now. Yeah. So, one, I think you have freediving in your future, because freediving is like the more physical, mental version of scuba diving. You can't do the exact same stuff because it's on one breath. You know, you're not chilling at 40 feet for an hour like you are on scuba. But it's been my vice the last few years. Like I got certified in Boulder. at this dive shop called Ocean First. And of course, there's like this sweet instructor from Florida who totally knows his shit. And he dives really deep, and it's a meditation, it's a spiritual experience. And then, then I can, so being in a kind of loosey-goosey situation right now, I've been able to spend time in Hawaii the last 2 winters.
Yeah.
So that's been just like pure, just such a gift.
Can we talk about it a little bit? Because from what I know about free diving, you obviously have to be good in the water, but it also requires emotional control, psychological control, because as you said, it is one breath. And when your brain senses that it's running out of oxygen, there can be an instinct or a reflex to panic. And when you're free diving, of course, that can be a dangerous situation. Talk about the training that goes into these free dives and maybe what meditative or stress relieving properties you've seen in your life.
Yeah. So most people think, oh, well, how long can you hold your breath? And that training comes relatively, not quickly, but it can come, especially for someone who's like running as much as you or I do. But that's not the limiting factor. Like, to be honest, I don't do dry land apnea training. That's like breath hold training.
Mm-hmm.
I just, because my baseline's like, I don't even know what my baseline is right now. Probably, I don't know, my PR is 5 minutes. So it's probably like 3:30 or something, maybe 4 minutes. But that doesn't matter, because when you're in the water, depth is the limiting factor.
Okay.
Like it and that requires
pressure.
Exactly.
Okay.
Pressure and equalization. And that requires repetitive training at depth. So the short answer is, I'm not really training that much, because I would have to live on the water and do this for month-long stints. You can't just go blow your muscles up for like a week and then be like good to go to 150 feet. At least like I can't. I'd have to, basically move to the water for 6 months and do, strong training. And some people do. They do it for maybe like a month. Freediving, man, it's
one of those things. It like becomes kind of part of people's identity and lifestyle, much like trail running does.
Totally. There's so many similarities between the freediving world and ultra running. I think freedivers are actually a little bit quirkier, because there's fewer of them, for one.
Yeah.
And if you're competing, you're really only looking at a line in the water column, and that doesn't interest me as much as being able to go look at coral, look at fish, manta rays. Maybe I get the chance to see a spot of spinner dolphins, and then my life is complete. And I can, I'm good.
To the bottom of the ocean. And
I've made it. So that's my interest. And like, this is not, it takes that mental component of cleaning your slate. You can't go into the water, even if you're going down just for like 30 seconds, with the stress of life, the stress of COVID, work stress, whatever. You have to clean your slate when you're in the water. And that is why I'm totally addicted to it.
Yeah. And that breath hold component helps with kind of stilling your internal voice a little bit, doesn't it? I know, because I've done like some breath work training and just sort of doing some of the practices, just laying on the ground in the living room with Harmony. We do it occasionally. And it really does have a beautifully calming feeling to it once you've done it. And I know that part of the free diving practice is practicing the breath holds and doing the breath work and doing sort of like the oxygen saturation prior to diving. It's something that intrigues me. Maybe you can take me for a trip one day.
I'm 100% down. I don't know if I'll ever guide a trail running camp, but I will guide a free diving camp in a heartbeat.
Maybe we can combine the two. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also like, you can get into the physical sports physiology, almost like Wim Hof-esque type stuff.
Yeah.
I know we met, I remember meeting Wim Hof with you.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yep.
But there's an element of mindfulness that is so core to, I think, just what it means to be human and sentient and have consciousness, that I'm not holding my breath when I'm like sitting on my couch in the morning, but I've gotten a lot more practice in just being mindful in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks to this practice of cleaning my brain and like being able to just sit and be with myself and look out the window. And it's all part of the same thing, and it's all part about spending like 10 hours out on a trail. And you're just like,
yeah,
it's all connected. So
yeah, no doubt. Well, yeah, I mean, I think this is a perfect place to start because it kind of touches on a lot of the things that I wanted to talk with you about. I've been reading your blogs, and you've been intentionally also, I think, as you mentioned, sort of stilling your mind and calming your nervous system. You've also intentionally sort of changed your interaction with the world digitally. And we'll get into that in a sec, but maybe to touch on running a little bit before we go too deep. You've been a little bit quiet on the competition front. Obviously, you're just coming off an amazing victory at the Black Canyon 100K, but the last thing I remember you doing was sort of slogging out a tough 17th place finish at Western States last year. What have the last like 6 or 7 months been like on the running front for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's kindly, you're putting it kindly. It's been a bit of a wash of a couple of years, like really since 2019. Yeah, it's not to say I haven't been running. I've been relatively healthy this whole time, which is a huge blessing. But yeah, States was an absolute monster. Walking 30 miles at the end of States. Oh my God.
What happened there? I never got the story from you.
I still don't even know. It was a combination of just like, I think 10 little things that all added up, like a fall early on, blown quads early on, bad nutrition early on, like nothing that exciting. But this is like why we do ultras, right? Yeah. And I'm like, oh crap, like this is going to be one of those races for me where like,
kudos to you for slogging it out, Claire. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of people who, being in your position, coming back as the defending champion with, at least some pressure to kind of revalidate that victory or prove that it wasn't a fluke, quote unquote. Obviously, nobody feels that way, but I'm sure you put a little bit of pressure on yourself in that regard. And so was there any pressure or was there any temptation to call it a day there at Western States rather than slog it out?
Of course, the temptation starts at like mile 10, right? When you're like, damn, I don't know if today's going to be my day. Yeah. But I DNF'd there in 2017 at mile 93. And I was so naive. I mean, even though I've been doing this now for like 6 years, I didn't know anything those first few years. That's when like we met, and it's like I was just soaking everything up from people like you, Rory Bazio, Steph Howe, Rob Carr, like all these people. And I'm just not to say that's why I DNF'd at mile 93 in 2017, but that was I think something that has stuck with me that I don't want to have happen again at States, knowing how important States is to this community, to me, the whole thing. And I had like all these buddies fly out, last summer. I'm like, man, they didn't come here to watch me, like eat pho at like 2 p.m. because David Roche, my coach, is like, I just wanted, he's so great too. It's so hard for him to see his athletes like walking in, right? Because he's like, yeah, I want you to stop, but like, I also know you don't want to stop and you should definitely finish, but like, we should also maybe just go get pho.
Really?
Yeah. But I mean, no, he was like, definitely finish, but we all have these
supportive either way, right?
Yeah. So yeah, kudos to my buddy Mikey. Oh God, Yeah.
Well,
We all have,
congratulations. I mean, I think it
yeah,
sets a good example too, Claire. I mean, obviously there's a time and a place to pull the plug. You
yeah,
had experienced that at
absolutely.
Western States all the way down at mile 93. You pulled the plug a few years ago before winning and bringing home a Cougar trophy. And then, yeah, you rounded out the trifecta with another tough one, the 17th
Yeah.
place finish. But it
Yeah.
does, I think it's a, it's a spiritual journey and it's a moral victory to make the finish line on a tough day like that. And I just did that for the first time myself in October at the Grand Raid. That was the first time I really had to like slog it out. And there's definitely value in doing it. But in addition to sort of being quiet on the competition front, you've also been quiet on the internet front. And I know this has been a really sort of intentional pivot or an intentional change of your online presence and your digital consumption. And I think you've written about it a lot on your website. So I just want to open the door to this conversation because I think it could be really valuable for people.
Yeah. Yeah. So the last few, in addition to not having a lot of running competitions in the last few months, I've I've just started to ask myself, like, why do I do certain things? Like, what am I doing here? Right? Like, how do I spend my time? Like, what am I doing when I'm like talking about running? Like, how am I being an environmentalist? Just like, I think basic questions we all ask ourselves. At least I'm guessing most of us do. And I'll be honest, I don't think I really started asking these questions until the last 6 months. Call it a bit of like a come to some realization moment. I don't know what it is, but we're always on this journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll fully admit, like, the digital world, social media, like, got me the career I have today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, I also won a bunch of races, and but being able to be savvy online, create our personal like brands, this type of thing, get people excited about running. Like, I think that's fantastic. Like, I feel so grateful that that was a part of my 20s, and our sport is blowing up. Like, our sport, there's people doing our sport left and right, and that excites me.
Yeah.
But I've started to see a bit of an end road for me personally in what it means to be a professional runner. I like don't see myself staying, like, paying my rent through running really long into the future. And
Wow.
so it's sort of, yeah, like, I still would like to compete at a high level, and we'll see, like, if my sponsors have been very supportive. I mean, my employer, I still work for Patagonia
Yeah, I want to
in
talk about that
marketing.
eventually. Let's remember to talk
Yeah.
about
Okay. Um, but I basically was like, I don't get that much joy out of like being online scrolling. I feel like I haven't even seen a lot of my running buddies because of the last few years, and I want to basically force myself to have more intentional one-on-one, whether it's like a phone call, a text. If people want to know what I'm up to, like, they can, that's what friends do. We like talk, right?
that. Or
And it's
subscribe to
been,
your newsletter, which I just did.
yeah,
Your blog. I mean, keep going, but I want to talk about like because it's not like you've given up on the world. You've sort of like
no,
scrubbed your Instagram profile, but talk about this like intentional change with how you're interacting with the internet.
yeah. Well, and there's a lot of like nuance to it, right? Because there's no silver bullet to anything. But basically, I got pretty disturbed at what Facebook, now Meta, has figured out that their products do to the youth, and to all people. And you
Yeah.
can just like look on like Google Scholar and type in like social media and mental health, right? And we all shake our heads. Yes, we know, it doesn't really make me feel awesome. Like, I hope the teens are okay. Like, what about, these like kind of sketchy correlations between mental health and screen time? And I've been like, just shaking my head at that for the last few years. Everyone watched Social Dilemma. It's like, okay, we know this. But I think for me, I'm like, okay, if I want to be a role model in a way I like feel super stoked on right now in 2022, I want to show some like, I don't know, 22-year-old runner that, hey, if it stresses you out to be online constantly in these very premeditated forms, right? Like I have a blog that's not premeditated, but I'm saying these companies that sort of put our creativity into little boxes, which is great for some people, like totally respect that.
There's definitely positives to it, but
absolutely. Yeah. Information sharing. I mean, the activism side, there's positives. So it's not a silver bullet, but I want to show people that like you can still run at a high level. You can still, we'll see how long I make money off of it running without social media. But you can still be whatever in this scene, somewhat relevant and do it maybe in a more analog way. Like that's basically what I'm testing right now. And to be honest, Dylan, I mean, since I like scrubbed my Instagram, dude, I have not been happier.
Really?
In like 5 years. Like, I mean, there's also other good things going on in my life, but I like feel like my attention span has gotten better again.
Wow. That's really cool, Claire. And I mean, I think you're always a leader. You've probably always been like that in your life. And I think this is sort of, I mean, you could call it risky as a professional athlete, but also, I mean, if you think of like Jim Walmsley's not the type of guy who's always online tooting his horn or whatever. He's probably not spending a ton of time just like doom scrolling either. And he makes a good career out of it. And I think as long as you want to be a professional athlete, there's going to be people who will want to support you, especially somebody with the voice and the mission that you have. And I was actually curious about that too, because I know being a professional athlete, a professional female athlete online always comes with creeps or whatever, but also when you have sort of this vocal environmental and social justice mission that you're talking about, I'm sure you probably get a fair share of obnoxious, potentially hurtful criticism online as well. Did that play into your decision to distance yourself from social media?
Yeah, a little bit. Nothing like directly hurtful towards me, but I think it was asking myself, like, what am I consuming and what echo chambers am I hiding in? Like, I don't want to just listen to people who agree with me. And I think I found over the last few years, a lot of my knowledge base of say, environmental issues, it's not as deep as some people might think. At least that's what I felt, you can read a couple articles about, say, like a mining issue on like sacred native land. But like, I want to make sure I know like the details of this and reading long form pieces and not just a couple sentences from, the leaders in that. And I get that a lot of people, that's all they're gonna like read and ingest over like controversial or contested issues. It's just, I realize it's just like not my style.
Yeah.
Like I want to push myself to like, read authors that I don't really see eye to eye with. Yeah. And have a little more like empathy for everyone. Like I'm just talking into the void here. Like just, pick a topic and so.
I mean, I think it's an important topic of conversation because social media is so ubiquitous now. And when you have a following and when you use your voice, there's going to be a lot of people who want to tear you down or want to have a debate and want to for lack of a better word, hurt your feelings. And it sucks, dude. It sucks. And really, for the first time in my career, I'm starting to get like a decent amount of it because I like publish podcasts and say things in the world, you know, for really the first time in my career. And dude, it just like makes me hate my cell phone and makes me want to throw it out the window every day. But I think I have a decent hold on it and an ability to, I think, separate the noise from the signal, so to speak. But it's a tough thing to consider. And I think, you know, all of us, the listeners, you and I, struggle with it to a certain degree. And it's crazy to think about the next generation of people who are growing up natively inside these social media platforms and to think about what the potential consequences of it are, because it's kind of scary. But let's stop talking about social media.
Well, I mean, yeah. And on that, I think it's like ultimately everyone will know what's right for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's if people are like wondering, oh, what should I do? It's like, don't ask me. The answer is in yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like you're deeply, deeply in the ultra running community. You know, you're a pundit, you're an elite athlete, you're all of the above, right? Businessman. And so it's like, yeah, you probably have to decide that like, you're going to have to deal with this, like the haters and whatnot. And you know, deep down your worth.
Yeah.
And you also don't have to respond to the haters.
Yeah.
No, like
that's been the hard part because I want to be very defensive and very mean in return. But anyway, I want to talk more about this, like what you just said about you not expecting yourself to be paid as a professional athlete or be making your living necessarily as a professional athlete long term. You also mentioned that for a while now, you've actually held like sort of an employment role with Patagonia as well. And I think this is really the wave of the future for really 360-degree athlete relationships with their brand partners. So talk about what you're doing with Patagonia and sort of what the long-term career path is that you see ahead of you, if you can predict such a thing.
Yeah. So Patagonia employs a handful of ambassadors. And ambassadors are typically like what a sponsored athlete would be. So it's like a contract based, a sponsored athlete more or less. Although Yvonne Chouinard doesn't like the term athlete. I've heard that before. So that's why they're called ambassadors.
Yeah.
But a few of us are employees basically to go a little bit deeper on whether it's the marketing side or the environmental campaign side. So most people are well aware of the climber, Tommy Caldwell.
Yep.
If you're not, look him up, Google him, world's best rock climber. So he's at, Tommy's on a different level than me, always will be. He's in his 40s now, and he's really dug deep onto getting into the campaigns that Patagonia is working on environmentally, and just seeing where he can throw his weight around. And so that's like the sort of marquee example of that kind of role, while also like attending, the corporate marketing like meetings, and talking about minutiae of campaigns and things. So, and that's essentially what I've been doing as well. But since I'm not Tommy Caldwell, and very
Claire.
differently,
you're being modest. This is a no humility zone on the podcast. I mean, you're Western States champion. You're CPC champ. You're one of the best of our generation.
Thanks, Ebo. I'm explaining sort of the spread though of these employees at Patagonia, right?
Yeah.
So in the last few years, I have sort of leaned more into the marketing side of things for whatever handful of different reasons. And it's been fascinating, really, really interesting to see how much work goes into campaigns and how much the people at Patagonia truly, truly care about like grassroots environmental issues.
Yeah.
But in this journey, I've also realized like I am not cut out for this type of job. Okay. And like I am not made to work in marketing or the outdoor industry, I think. And it kind of makes sense. Like I was like a science geek in college. All my friends were like, "Oh, Claire, like, when are you going scuba diving?" You know, like that's what my running teammates knew me as. There's like, "Where are you going now?" And so in the last few years, I've just been sort of trying to listen to my heart and see, you know, what do I want to do? And I've had so much support from, you know, my manager at Patagonia, the people I work with to explore that. And that's why I'm trying to get back into science, but specifically the marine policy. So
is there a path within the Patagonia architecture to where you could potentially move out of the marketing side of things more into the environmental side of things? Or do you think you want to do something totally different?
Yeah, well, first off, I gotta go like learn some more stuff.
Don't we all?
I gotta learn more about like how our oceans work, how the UN like operates protecting these seas. Like our seas are just the Wild West right now. It's pretty gnarly. And so that's why I'm focusing on just like getting back into school, filling my brain with that kind of stuff for now. And yeah, Patagonia is just like so supportive. I don't know the answer to that question, but yeah, I'd like to, you know, stay working with them as closely as possible for as long as I can.
Good. No, I think it's a really good move for them and for any brand. And it's really kind of what I'm doing now in this new phase of my career. And David Laney posted last week. You're not on Instagram, but I'll tell you, David Laney posted last week his new partner, Craft Sportswear. He took a job with them doing, I think, some sales work. But for the three of us, I think it helps us to feel a deeper sense of involvement, a deeper sense of loyalty, to really inject our knowledge and experience into the marketing and the product, and really creates a powerful athlete brand relationship that you don't get just by like paying somebody to wear your shirts and your shoes, right? Is there anything there that you want to talk about just in terms of how your work in the marketing department with Patagonia has maybe helped you feel a little bit more part of the mission, or things that you've learned from them and that they've learned from you?
Yeah, well, I guess it's not specific to marketing, but within Patagonia, like the product testing is so phenomenal. Like that's, I think, one of my favorite parts of being a runner and then working with a brand that's making products. And I'm curious how it is with you in Speedland, because that's what you're talking about. Like, right?
Yeah. And other stuff that I can't talk about, but
okay. I'm like, do it.
But yeah, I mean, it's like where you feel that you're not just an athlete, right? Like you're a partner, like you're an employee, like you're actually making a difference, not just getting a box of clothes and shoes.
Right. And that your experience of spending, you know, X many hours out there really means something. And I have so much respect for designers. So much respect. Like the amount of effort it takes to make a pair of black spandex women's running shorts. It's insane. And it's like when you buy a good piece of clothing that lasts you for, you know, years on end, and you can spend 5,000 miles in that thing, and, you know, and your butt's a happy butt or whatever. Like, it gives me hope for, you know, our generation is sort of seeing this new wave of like less consumerism, more conscious consumerism. You know, we're not just like trying to buy the cheapest shit like 100 times over. And that makes me so excited to be a part of that more than anything. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, congratulations, Claire. I mean, it's always fun to connect with you whenever we do. And I've always viewed you, like as a bit of a leader, and just kind of like somebody who's willing to do things a little bit different and still sort of compete and be an athlete at the highest level and set big goals for yourself, and not being afraid to chase them, but having a deeper and different impact than I think most athletes sort of are able to do in their careers. So let's talk about your race this weekend, dude. You smashed it. You smashed it. I know back in the fall, because I was reading your blog, that you were sort of training up for a road marathon. You ultimately, I think, got injured or something, but talk about sort of when Black Canyon landed on your radar and sort of when the preparation started.
Yeah, I was training for CIM, so California International Marathon, fast marathon, and I've never done a road marathon. And anyways, it just kind of, the road kind of wrecked me, is like why I do trails, I guess. And trail running is awesome. And it was just such a bummer because I got so fit, and you've been there, right? Where you're like so fit and you don't have a stage to test it and to rip it up on. And so I kind of was in this holding pattern for a couple months of just like, I hope this all doesn't just like disappear. Like, but I guess that's what happens as we get older. We'll go through lots of peaks and valleys, but I was able to figure out my like tib injury, just basically a minor strain. And so I said, let's sign up for a winter ultra.
Yeah.
And I've been to Black Canyon before. I did it on the Out and Back rain year in 2017. Okay. It was totally miserable. It was like the most miserable day. One of my least favorite days of racing of all time. Nicole Bitter won. I eked in second that year, but I remember being like, man, I really wish I had seen this whole course. I hear such great things, and it just was such a cold day, and still like Jamil put on a great race. So I'm like, screw it. I'll just go back this year. And so I never really had the intention of doing Black Canyon as a avenue to Western states.
Yeah.
This year I've sort of been stoked to focus a lot of energy in summer mountain running season. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, yeah, we all get it, right? Like there are only these 3-4 prime months of alpine running in the year. And every time I've done states, it's been awesome, more or less. But then I'm wrecked for the rest of the summer. I'm like the grumpy, injured POS that is like, kind of like, looking at my friends going out for these sick runs in July. And I'm like, bummer. I like, my endocrine system is still recovering. I just take a long time to recover. So this year,
Western states takes a lot out of you. I mean,
emotionally, physically, the whole thing. So
because you have to run so fast. I mean, on paper, it looks like this easy, fast course, but it's also 100 degrees and you're like on the rivet the whole time. So you're completely blown afterwards. But anyway, I want to talk about that later when we start talking about sort of like why you declined the golden ticket, but you've sort of teased it now. But let's talk a little bit more about the training because, for me, seeing that you were training for CIM, obviously it seems like that type of training, once you got healthy again, you were really able to build off that speed block and come back and race 100K really well. But you've mentioned your coach, David Roche, a couple of times. And one of the things that I also just really love and admire about you is the fact that you're like a low volume trainer and that you and David really work together to like maximize bang for buck time and mileage wise with your training. And I think it's a great lesson for the younger athletes who are coming up in the sport. And even for people like me, to be honest, I mean, because it is easy to get caught up in how much volume are you doing and what's this guy or this gal doing and how do I compare? So talk about your guys' relationship and how you came to this strategy of sort of, I would call it low, moderate volume of training.
Yeah, I've been with David for almost 6 years now. It sounds weird. Yeah. Dear friends with his wife, Megan. God, I love those two. But so, yeah, it's been an evolving process. Like it's been something that I feel like David just is able to see people almost more before they can see themselves, and that comes from like a spiritual sense, a love for running sense, also a physical sense. And so I mean, it's almost like, you know, I don't have words for it. Like, David is a genius. He is a total genius. And at certain points in the last 6 years, I have been frustrated because I'm like, I don't know about this, you know, like David, I'm on the edge, you know, I get injured super easily. And every single time I feel like David is able to see a block. He's able to be like, are you stoked about this race? I always choose my races. And then he builds it in, and that's worked really well. And sometimes I choose really kind of not great racing schedules, or he's like, oh, okay, here we go, you know? And we've definitely excelled at nailing in these like adventure hard effort runs a couple weeks before a race. That's like a marquee part, I feel like, of David and my's training. You know, he has all the classic swap stuff, 6 days a week max. Like, I'm low mileage. There's just nothing much to say there, but one workout a week, roughly one long run a week. But I did a 50K this year in January, 3 weeks before Black Canyon. And it was like up a 13,000 foot
Was that a race, or was that just
no? I like made that up. Yeah.
So that was like a good test of the endurance and of the engine that you did.
Exactly. And time on feet.
But like the biggest volume week was that week for you leading into Black Canyon, where you did like a total of 82 miles and 32 of them were on this volcano run that you did. Yeah. And it really, like, I mean, I haven't looked, I'm not the type of person that scrolls Strava, and I get the sense that you're not either, but probably, you know, there's at least a few people in the field that are doing 50, 75% more training than that.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what do you think, how do you think you're able to race at such a high level on that type of volume? Is it simply the fact that David recognizes when you're excited, you race better, or when you have more energy, you race better? What do you think it is that makes you able to succeed with that level of training?
Well, two things. First, I don't really log, at least when I was in Hawaii for a month, I was not logging my dive time. And that adds to something. I don't know what it is, but it's like, it's this sacred time that I'm just like, I don't even know how you log freediving on Strava. So I'm like, I'm not logging this, you know, like what? And so I know deep down in my heart, like, I'm fit.
Yeah.
I feel so fit. Like,
can you feel that while you're diving? Like, can you feel your aerobic fitness while you're underwater?
I mean, you do a couple hours of run in the morning, you dive right after for an hour, and then you go back out at sunset and dive for 2 hours. And I'm saying diving, basically like diving deep, snorkeling, messing around. Like that. That's just how I actually was putting in kind of a lot of volume, like not in the way that's going to make me injured, but I have like these 3 foot long fins, that made my legs just like, I don't know what they did to my legs, but I definitely know that type of volume was helping me. And I don't get that as much when I'm here, like at home in Colorado. I try and swim in the pool, so that helps.
Dude, I'm in California right now. I'm going to drive out to the beach as soon as we're done and just dive as deep as we can and try and duplicate your fitness. Yeah. But do you ever feel like, I don't know, do you ever feel like you're not doing enough, or do you ever get caught up in the volume of the competition, the training volume?
To answer your actual question, 100%, like compared to pretty much all of my competitors, I'm running more or less the least amount. Maybe not. I think Anne-Marie Madden, who is the coolest woman alive, got third this past weekend. She also keeps it pretty low, but she's a anesthesiologist and cardiac units, so she's like busy in her other way, you know. So I'm not doing that. I think it comes down to, you know, you got to know where your sweet spot is. I can't show up at the start line at Black Canyon if I'm tired and injured. Like, and it's just, you read enough about endurance athletics, especially in a heavy sport, and there are going to be people who are the best in the world who aren't doing the most volume.
Yeah.
Like this just is a thing. You look at it in track races. Like, I mean, I raced with a guy in college, Peter Callahan. He runs for Belgium on the track. He was so low volume. He would sometimes only do races. He's a many times sub 4 minute miler.
Awesome.
He would sometimes literally only race like on the track, run a 3:58, and then he would spin the rest of the week.
Wow.
And, that's an extreme example, right? Yeah. I'm somewhere kind of towards his end, but I'm not anywhere near that. And then you have the pure volume people on the complete other end of the spectrum. And they might also be running, super high. So it's like, this is a spectrum. And I think we do obsess, especially as ultra runners, on that volume heavy end or vert end. And it's just like, you gotta turn off the noise and just know what works for you.
And you
it's
have
hard though, for sure.
I don't know. I always like to phrase it as training for a state of mind rather than a state of fitness, right? And when you feel it, you feel it, and not being obsessed with the numbers, but just like, you can start to get an instinct of when you're ready and when you're not. And it's not necessarily when you're doing the most that feeling comes. It's when the other circumstances of your life are sort of playing out in the right way. And when your overall stress volume is low, and when you can go out and dive for 2 hours in the evening and satisfy that passion as well. So anyway, totally. I think it's a great lesson.
I love your little smirk, because it's like, I feel like you're thinking of those times in your life where you're like, where you've been dialed, like last summer at Hard Rock,
100%.
you walked in, you had swag, you were chill, but like stoked. And I was like, oh, Dylan's about to wreck house, but you also did train a ton, because you can lay on the miles, dude.
Well, I mean, but I've always been somebody more like you. I've always been somebody who does better on lower volume, consistent volume, and speed. A few sort of strategic revs of the engine, for example, like your volcanic effort on Hawaii. I did the Backbone Trail a few months before Hard Rock, and so you have the big hard efforts as a stepping stone to the ultimate A goal. But for the most part, it's all just hitting singles and doubles every day. I'm never the type of person who's smashing workouts and whatever. Anyway, great lesson, great conversation. Let's talk about the race itself, because it was pretty dramatic. And I was able to watch a decent amount of the live stream on Saturday. And it seemed like the women's race was pretty exciting, because you had Dominica out front all day. And then there was a big chase group of yourself, Anne-Marie Madden, Addie Bracey, Taylor Nolan, and many others. Talk us through sort of like how the race played out. Did Dominica go out front early, and what was the dynamic like in the women's field?
Dylan, I didn't even see her.
Really?
Like she was so far gone. I was real far back at the beginning. I was chatting. I really wanted to execute on my strategy, which was like chill. Like, people say this over and over about Bot Canyon. Like it's carnage. It's a carnage type race. So I don't know what place I was in at like mile 10 or mile 20. And I did link in, or kind of sync in, with this group of, early on, it was Devin Yanko, Taylor Nolan, Anne-Marie Madden showed up, another Canadian, Catherine Short, EO was in there at some point. And basically we were chatting. Addie was ahead of us. And then the group kind of started to thin out, And honestly, Anne-Marie Madden is the world's best pacer. Like this woman is so fast.
She's great.
She won't tell you that. Yeah. She's so great. And I'm like, Anne-Marie is so smart. I don't want to go too far ahead of Anne-Marie, because I know she'll catch me. I know it. She's like back there, just like, oh, I can't go any faster. I'm like, look at, she was only she's
She's
10 minutes
mega
finished.
consistent. Yeah, she's not the type of person that blows up.
Yeah, just so consistent. So that was really, really fun. We were in a group. The last I was with a group, it was with Anne Marie, Addie, and Catherine Short. And then I happened to get to this aid station. It was about mile 31. And I went straight to like the water bucket, and they like went straight to like get water, and I wanted to get washed down, right? And get wet. And so I was out of there first by whatever stroke of luck, whatever. And then I looked back and I'm like, oh, they're kind of taking a minute. And so I was like, okay, I guess this is it. It's halfway through. Now's the time. I think we can wind up a little bit. Let's see who can hang on.
That happens a lot, doesn't it? It's like a lot of times the separation happens at the aid station, and then you have to like hit the gas at least a little bit, huh?
Yeah, make a decision of like, I'm not waiting. I feel good enough.
Yeah.
And so luckily there was another out and back to this like Black Canyon City aid station around mile 37. So I was able to see everyone. Anne Marie was like not far behind. But the craziest thing, Dylan, was Dominika, who's supposedly 7:04 100K runner. Everyone's talking about how fast this Polish girl is. She is fast, let me tell you, because she was 15 minutes ahead of me at mile 37. And I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm going to catch her unless she blows up. And in my mind, I'm like, well, this is why it's an ultra. I'm like, David said, if I feel good at 37, like the rest is, he's like, it's going to be a good race if you're smiling at 37. And I was smiling at 37.
David at some point, I think, posted that you were as far back as nearly 30 minutes behind Dominika. Is that accurate?
That probably was early on, if that's possible.
Wow. I mean, that's huge. Yeah. So, I mean, you had a smile on. That means that you weren't totally discouraged by the split to Dominika.
And I knew how well I was fueling. Like I was taking an extra bottle. It seemed like most people were only fueling with 2 soft flasks. And I had grabbed 3 at mile 20 because it's 80 degrees out. What? So
smart.
Yeah. You know, and I just chugged it. And it was probably 200 calories of powder, honey singer powder. And so that kind of stuff, I was just feeling so proud of myself. And I'm like, dude, this is an ultra and all these little things add up and I'm ready to go, you know?
On your Strava, you said, I drank a fuck ton.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's a scientific measurement, but what a great lesson. Yeah.
You know, we have aid stations. No one's out here trying to be a hero and get by on not a lot of water. It's like I'm aided in 100K. Like I'm going to drink as much as I possibly can, and the gels. So
did it feel like a hot day? Because it was supposedly 80 degrees.
Dude, it was disgustingly hot.
Do you think that your time in Hawaii right before the race helped out with that acclimatization rather than being in Boulder right before?
100%. I have so much gratitude to the Big Island. I mean, truly, if you're trying to run in a hot race in the winter, I think it's really, really hard to get that adaptation in a cold climate. You know, we have dear friend, Eric LaPuma, and my partner's cousin, Joanna, came from Stowe, Vermont.
Yeah.
Actually, it's Richmond. They're running -30. And it's just how can you compete? So, I mean, it's possible. But Dominika, actually, she's lives in Poland, I'm pretty sure. And she said she was training in negative temps.
Yeah.
So with Anne Marie, she's training in Canada. So it's not impossible, but I love the heat and the fact that I was like, oh my God, it is so hot.
Yeah.
Means it was, I think it was a really hot day.
Yeah. Well, great job. And you said in your Strava that you got a visual of Dominika with about 3 miles to go. So, I mean, it came down to the wire. Do you want to just kind of describe those last few miles before we move on to the declining of the golden ticket?
Yeah. So there's one aid station at 3.5 to go. And I'm kind of rocking up. I'm like, all right, let's put a bow on this. I honestly thought I was in second. I just thought she was so far ahead, but I was working. I wanted to have a proud time. And the aid station volunteers are like, by the way, the lead girl's 30 seconds ahead. And I was like, what? I mean, yeah, I was none the wiser. And so I gathered my water and I just absolutely took off. I mean, I didn't take off at like a 5:50 pace, but I took off at probably like close to like 7:30 pace for the end of 100K, which feels like it's the fastest, ever.
Yeah.
Because there was kind of a 2x2 track. So it wasn't single track. It was like really runnable. And I saw her and I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna catch her. And we exchanged, some nice sort of congratulations to each other. I told her, I was like, don't worry, I'm not taking a ticket. You're gonna get a ticket. And she was like, how far are they? I was like, you're fine. You just don't. So
she was probably hurting from that early hot clip.
Yeah.
She was running.
Yeah. I mean, she did not, I actually am curious. I wonder if anyone can figure out, I don't know. Yeah. How she's doing. She did not,
she wasn't
look that great in the heat. Yeah. I think the heat just was like that gnarly,
Yeah.
So,
well, it was super exciting to watch both races, and the men's race, Hart Brown went wild there, and Dominica nearly pulled it off until you caught her in the last 3 miles of the race, which rarely happens in ultras, as we all know. But brave performances from both of them, and very well executed race from yourself for another just awesome victory. And you've been so solid in your career, and you have so many of these just big wins at big races, and you always show up. And I think, obviously there's going to be a lot of people who are curious as to why you decided to decline the golden ticket to Western States. As we've talked about earlier in the conversation, you DNF'd to mile 93, then you won the damn race, and then you slogged it out for a 17th place. So you've been to Western States 3 separate times, but talk about the decision to not take the golden ticket, because obviously you just mentioned that you came to Black Canyon with the intention that you weren't going to take the ticket. So why is that?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I made this decision more or less like after I finished states last year. It was that like, I need a year off from this race. Yeah. It is such a special scene. You've done super well there multiple times. Well, okay, first I'll explain. I finished the race, and the person I'm actually most concerned about telling is Craig Thornley.
He texted me. We were texting. Yeah, he was like, yeah, Claire didn't intend to take the ticket.
Yeah, well, because as I'm leading up, and you don't want to spray. So I didn't really want to announce that I wasn't going to take the ticket, because that's like, I wasn't like betting on myself before Black Canyon, even though I did go to Black Canyon with the intention to win. Like if I'm going to a race fit, it's what we're all doing. We're trying to win. So I just didn't feel like I needed to say, by the way, I'm not taking the ticket. But I guess backing up, a year ago, I'm like, I just really want to be able to focus on some mountain stuff at home. Mm-hmm. Especially while I have like a bit of speed still, shorter FKTs. I mean, I've only been up my backyard 14er once. I've literally only summited longs once in my life. And I'm like, what? This is the most beautiful mountain on the planet. Like, so there's just like a lot of stuff at my fingertips, a lot of opportunities, trails, explorations that I am really eager to just dive into this summer. And
can you be more specific, please, Claire? Are you going for the FKT longs? I mean, the other thing is like, for me and for a lot of observers of the sport, it's like, well, Claire's not doing Western States. That means she's focused 100% on UTMB, but you're not on the UTMB list. So what are you doing? What are you doing?
Well, it's funny because, I don't even know what I'd have to do to get into that lottery again. I'm like, how do you qualify for UTMB? Because I wasn't, well, I know, Dylan. Pre-COVID, I was like, I'm going to take a year off Europe. Yeah. And then, so, it's just a couple years have gone by where I'm like, I'll eventually get back to that. But there's just so much in my backyard. Like my eyes are bigger than I just can't get over that. And I don't even have an answer to your question of specifics.
Really? Wow.
I literally don't. Like, they'll come. I think there is a chance I would do 100 this summer, and it would be in Colorado. I mean, yeah, if I'm going to do 100, I would consider Leadville.
Well, okay. I was going to say that narrows it down to like
and
Leadville. And maybe a couple others, but that's awesome. I mean, you've won that race in the past, and obviously there's some incredible women who've competed there. And I think Ann Trayson still has a very stout.
Yeah, she does.
Record.
Yeah. So the year I ran it, I was 24, didn't know anything. I was 30 minutes off her course record. So like no one's even gotten close, because I had the second fastest time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also signed up for the Day of States San Juan solstice, which is like supposedly
that's always been a bucket lister for me.
The San Juans, so so I finished the race at Black Canyon, and I see Craig Thornley, and I'm like, oh, here's the man I want to kind of give a hug, because I love states. I want to go back. I want to go back multiple times in the next 10 years, like without a doubt. And I want to show up, and I want to try and win states again for sure. It's just not my year this year, and I'm going to have to work my tail to get back in, my tail off. But that's okay, and like Taylor and Olin got a ticket out of it. So I'm glad. I just,
it's actually a good story, I think, that's come from Black Canyon, because all 6 of the people who are going to Western States are first timers. You would have been the only person to be a repeat Western States runner from that golden ticket field. And I think it adds somewhat of a interesting dynamic to the Western States start list to have 6 first timers get their golden ticket at Black Canyon, and really entertaining.
Well, and they obviously can do well in the heat. So it'll be so entertaining. I mean,
Well, good
so
for
I'll
you
be a
for
very happy spectator. Very happy.
It's great to have that self-awareness, because there is probably just some internal pressure of like, oh man, like I could go back and win that thing again, especially having such a strong day in the heat at Black Canyon, and the race being as important as it is. It's pretty impressive to have the self-awareness to think, no, this isn't my year. I've got other goals. I've got other things that I want to do in order to go back to Western States with that feeling of excitement and motivation and hunger to perform there again, and to know that you just don't have it right now, but that it'll come back eventually. That's pretty awesome.
Like, you got to have that feeling, right? That deep, almost like guttural yearning for a race that takes that much out of you. And to be honest, like, I think I'm still recovering from running Western States in 2019. Like the emotional and physical, like really the emotion, like around
one of the great women's finishes ever.
And for all, like, think of your best 100, right? What would you say is your best 100 finish?
Hard Rock or Ultra Trail Mount Fuji from 18. Those two.
Yeah. It's like, dude, do you feel like you're still recovering from Hard Rock last summer?
No, but Claire, this is a good anecdote, because I did Western States one too many years. I did what you're not doing. So in 2014, I finished 3rd after finishing 7th, 5th, and then 3rd. And I was like, okay, next year I'm going to win this damn race, right? Because I progressed 7, 5, 3, and then it has to be 1. Right. But I knew throughout the entire training block, just like I couldn't get myself that same feeling, that same motivation. I just didn't have it that next year. And I should have taken the year off in 2015 rather than going back, because I ultimately DNF'd, one of my only DNFs in my entire career. And in retrospect, it's so glaringly obvious, like you should have taken that year off from Western States and gone back some other time. And now I'm like, well, I'm just going to anchor the live stream from now on. I'm sort of retired from that race, but who knows? Never seen it. Well, Claire, it's been such a joy to reconnect and chat again. I feel like, you and I always have a great time and, joke around quite a bit in our text exchanges and whenever we see each other.
Training starts tomorrow, everyone. Yeah. That's our motto.
That's our inside joke between Claire and I. Training starts tomorrow. And it's usually we're telling each other that after, sucking down a couple of beers, knowing that we're going to be useless the following day. So training starts tomorrow. In closing, Claire, is there anything else that you're excited about right now? Aside from, you mentioned you're going back to grad school. What, you start in the fall? Is that right?
Yeah. Hopefully.
Awesome. So anything else that you're sort of excited to expend your intellectual energy on? Everybody knows that you're not the one-dimensional athlete type person. What else has you excited as a closing question?
Yeah, one thing that's been top of mind recently is this issue actually not far from Black Canyon. It's called Oak Flat, is a place about 40 miles east of Phoenix. And it's a sacred place to the San Carlos Apache. It's been their ancestral lands, since time began, more or less. And unfortunately, it's on the docket to be turned into a copper mine. And it's a really wild story of it's called a Midnight Rider that happened in the 2015 National Defense Authorization Act at the last moment, where senators were trying to pack in pork is what they call it. Mm-hmm. And it was a pretty gnarly and undoubtedly illegal land exchange between a foreign mining company and unfortunately, it was Senator John McCain who did this land exchange, and so basically, this tribe is trying to get their land back. Their land's worth $112 billion by an independent observer, and the land that was traded on their behalf, illegally, is worth $7 million. And it's not their sacred land. So it's just this wild, crazy thing that hopefully can be reversed through another act of Congress. Rep. Grijalva of Arizona has a bill called Save Oak Flat. And hopefully with some help from the Biden administration. But what's really cool, Dylan, is this high school teacher out of Phoenix, Brophy Prep is what it's called. His name's Cooper Davis. He gets these students to run a relay from Flagstaff. So it's this sick 200-mile relay from Flagstaff to Oak Flat. It's happening this Thursday. To raise awareness about Oak Flat. And he got the whole Native American tribe to join in. They represent, I think, 11 different tribes from around the country as far as Alaska. And they're doing this awesome relay, and there's going to be a gathering on Saturday. I don't know when this is going to come out, so it might be in the past, but I highly recommend everyone to look up Oak Flat. It's also, if rock climbers are listening, it's one of the best rock climbing crags in the Southwest. Yeah. That's actually where Tommy cut his teeth growing up, competitions and stuff.
And so effectively this sacred land is now going to be opened up for resource extraction. Is that the gist?
Yeah, exactly. And it would be an underground copper mine, which poses a lot of sinkhole threat to a large area.
Is there a way that you can send me some info that I can include in the show notes, or at least just a link where people could get involved? Okay, awesome.
Yeah. It's been I'm surprised. There's been a lot written about it in national level media. I don't think it's just gotten that spark quite yet of what's going to happen.
Well, once this podcast is released, millions of people are going to be activated. No, but seriously, this is really cool. And I think this is why people really love and admire you as an athlete and as a person, because it is about more than just going and winning Black Canyon. It's about saving these sacred lands. And, we need leaders like you. And I keep pressuring you to run for political office. And I'm going to come, volunteer for your staff. And,
no, Devo, I am fully, I will support your campaign. Yeah.
Come on, man.
I will support your campaign. Yeah. No. So look up Oak Flat, everyone. And, that might not be in your backyard, but as long as we just keep, talking about what's at risk and keep protecting what we love, like we're so lucky.
No doubt.
If we're able to be running on these trails, wherever we are, gosh, just gratitude for that.
Yeah. Well, gratitude for you, Claire. Congratulations on an awesome victory. I hope that you update your blog soon, since you're not on social media anymore, with an in-depth race report that we can all read, so that we can get some more of the great details of an awesome performance. And keep us posted as to what you do this summer. We'll be excited to follow, but appreciate your time on the podcast, and let's catch up again soon.
Thank you so much, Debo. Much love to you and Harbs.